Caterpillar and Cummins didn't lose to each other, they split the map. One rules the job site, the other rules the highway, and neither company's fans will tell you the other side of the story. It comes down to a single year, 2010, when Caterpillar made a multi-billion-dollar choice: abandon the highway entirely rather than pay the price to stay. But the trap that forced the retreat wasn't set in 2010, it was planted in 1919, before either of them was a giant at all. Because the greatest trick this rivalry ever pulled wasn't splitting the map, it was convincing the world they were actually fighting the same war. (1931) Memorial Day weekend at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. A diesel-powered Duesenberg rolls onto a track built for screaming gasoline engines, and nobody in the stands expects it to finish. Diesel is considered too weak, too slow for real racing. Car number 8, the Cummins Diesel Special, grunts through all 500 miles without a single pit stop. While the gasoline cars duck into pits for fuel and fresh rubber, the diesel just keeps circling, lugging along on roughly $1.40 of fuel oil. Driver Dave Evans crosses the line 13th. That same year, 2 states over in Peoria, Illinois, Caterpillar puts the Diesel 62 into production, the world's first mass-produced diesel tractor. It runs the new D9900 engine, after 16 months of testing under a shop nickname nobody outside the plant ever heard: Old Betsy. Clessie Cummins, an 8th grade dropout, built the Diesel Special to prove diesel wasn't a joke, and founded Cummins Engine Company in Columbus, Indiana, 1919. Caterpillar didn't exist until 1925, when Holt Manufacturing merged with rival C.L. Best Tractor Company to survive a farm economy crash. 2 companies betting on the same unproven technology in almost the same year for almost opposite reasons. Cummins needs to prove the diesel can work at all. Caterpillar needs to prove it can be built by the thousand. That merger plants something else, something quieter: an independent dealer network built in from day one, with Yancey Brothers Company named the first dealer. Nobody calls it a moat in 1925, it just is one. Here's what the racetrack stunt hides. Cummins goes 18 years without turning a profit. The company survives on one man's bank account. Not Clessie's, not a bank's, a Columbus, Indiana businessman named William Glanton Irwin, pouring more than $2.5 million of his own fortune into it through the Depression's worst years. Clessie built the engines, Irwin kept the doors open. At this stage, the real rival isn't Caterpillar against Cummins, it's the whole industry's verdict on diesel itself, dismissed as too heavy and too slow to matter. Caterpillar spends 1931 to 1936 proving that verdict wrong at Hoover Dam. 12 Caterpillar 60 tractors hauling pipe sections and cutting diversion tunnel excavation in Nevada. The same years Cummins is fighting to survive 2 states east in Columbus, Indiana. None of that footage ever shows Irwin. History remembers the mechanic whose name is on the building, not the banker who kept it standing. By 1937, Caterpillar is the largest diesel engine producer on Earth, and Cummins, 18 years after founding, finally turns its first profit. 2 different bets, paying off the same year. Both companies believe in diesel now. What the next 65 years decide is who actually runs each one, and it isn't going to be either founder. (1941) Lewis B. Newmiller becomes Caterpillar's president. Not an engineer, not a founder's son, but a former Holt Manufacturing stenographer who started out taking dictation and filing blueprints, then worked his way up through parts management. He believes in one internal creed above all else: is there a better way of doing it? Within a year, the plants run 7 days a week. By 1945, Caterpillar has built roughly 51,000 track-type tractors for the U.S. military. The workforce has doubled, and women are running the foundry and the assembly line for the first time in company history. Caterpillar's post-war answer to how do we win is scale. The dealer network planted in 1925, now stretching across continents. Cummins, under new chairman J. Irwin Miller, the great-nephew of the banker who bankrolled the company through its first 18 broke years, now running the business himself, bets the opposite of Caterpillar's playbook. Not bigger, smarter. He believes Cummins should obsolete its own engines before a rival gets the chance. In 1952, a Cummins-powered race car, not a truck, a race car, wins the pole position at the Indianapolis 500. It's the first turbocharged car ever to qualify there, whistling past the entire gasoline field with driver Fred Agabashian at the wheel. 71 laps later, track debris gets sucked into the low-mounted turbo intake and the car retires. No diesel has raced at Indy since. The racetrack isn't the real bet. In 1973, Miller takes Cummins into acquiring Wholeset Engineering, bringing turbocharger manufacturing fully in-house. Cummins now controls its own forced induction supply chain, decades before turbocharging becomes standard equipment on any production diesel. By 1980, that racetrack stunt has become a standard showroom feature. Cummins expands its mass-produced turbocharged diesel lines, running the Wholeset turbos Miller now owns outright. 1989, Cummins 5.9-liter B-Series shows up as an engine option in the Dodge Ram. 160 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque, a 12-valve inline-six that grunts instead of screams. Demand outstrips supply so badly that Chrysler halts orders after 16,750 units sell in the first model year. It creates an entire subculture, Cummins guys, built partly around one part nobody designed to be famous. A steel dowel pin in the 12-valve 5.9-liter can vibrate loose and destroy the engine in seconds with zero warning. No warning light, no knock first, the engine just stops. The factory wouldn't redesign the block to fix the alignment issue for over a decade. The community named the threat themselves, the Killer Dowel Pin, KDP. Owners built their own aftermarket industry around it, a $5,200 prevention kit, a replacement bolt, a gasket, a retaining tab, installed at owner-run KDP jig parties in driveways and shop bays across the country. Skip the pit, and you're not looking at a repair, you're looking at an $8,000 to $14,000 replacement long block, plus another $2,000 to $4,000 in labor. While Cummins builds a devoted retail following one pickup at a time, Caterpillar fights a different war. From 1991 to 1995, under new CEO Donald Feitz, a Caterpillar lifer who joined the company in 1956 and never left the floor mentality behind, Caterpillar faces the longest, most bitter UAW strike of the decade. Local 974 in East Peoria, the largest UAW local outside Detroit, puts 15,000 to 20,000 workers on the street for 17 months straight, while Feitz refuses to settle on pattern bargaining terms, racing the whole time to fend off Komatsu's global price pressure. The strike was a labor war. What came next was a legal one. Then, in October 1998, both companies land in the same courtroom for the same reason. A DOJ and EPA consent decree names Caterpillar and Cummins, along with 5 other manufacturers, covering 95% of the U.S. heavy-duty diesel market, for installing software defeat devices that passed EPA's test, then quietly loosened NOx controls on the real road. Caterpillar had built roughly 320,000 of these engines since 1988. Cummins had built roughly 400,000 since 1991. Each pays $25 million and each signs a legal promise: no new defeat devices ever again. That promise doesn't survive 5 years for Caterpillar. What comes out of the tailpipe next is about to force the reckoning that 1998 only postponed. (2003) Caterpillar pays $153 million in federal nonconformance penalties because its on-highway engines don't meet the new EPA NOx limits. Direct fallout of the 1998 consent decree's tightening timeline. The promise made 5 years earlier already being tested. This isn't a paperwork problem, it's a combustion problem. And combustion problems don't get solved with a bigger checkbook. Picture it. A federal inspector pulls emissions data off a Caterpillar on-highway engine mid-shift, and the number on the printout doesn't match the number on the certification sticker. That gap is the whole chapter. In one corner, Caterpillar, under Chairman and CEO Jim Owens, a 30-year company lifer who'd run the mining and energy divisions before taking the top job in 2004. In the other corner, Cummins, under Chairman and CEO Tim Sulso, who took the wheel in 2000. 2 named CEOs, 2 opposite bets. The same regulatory deadline bearing down on both of them. Owens commits Caterpillar to an in-house fix called ACERT, betting the company can hit the coming 2010 emissions ceiling without the industry's emerging answer, urea-based SCR aftertreatment. A tank of diesel exhaust fluid and a chemical reaction that scrubs NOx out of the exhaust stream before it leaves the pipe. Sulso commits Cummins to the opposite bet, full SCR adoption. He does this years before anyone knows if the regulation will hold, or if the market will pay for the extra tank, the extra plumbing, and the R&D bill behind it. Caterpillar's own engineers go on record in 2005 warning that SCR might not be the best choice for on-highway applications. A public bet against the exact technology Cummins is already tooling up to build. Think of it like 2 crews betting on how to cross the same flooded river. One crew builds a taller truck and drives straight through. The other stops, builds a bridge nobody's asked for yet, and bets the water won't recede before the tolls start paying it back. Both CEOs are gambling in opposite directions, and both are staking their own careers on the outcome. Caterpillar builds almost everything itself. Cummins sells engines to anyone who will buy. This chapter is where that binary stops being background and starts deciding who wins. Both bets are still just bets. What breaks first is the tell. Caterpillar's ACERT-based C-15 develops its own well-documented failure mode. Intake valve actuator studs, weakened by the massive heat and cylinder pressure ACERT generates, snap and cause severe valve train failure. Most failures surface between 250,000 and 500,000 miles, right when a fleet operator has just finished paying off the truck. It's Caterpillar's mechanical answer to Cummins' killer dowel pin from the last chapter, on the opposite side of the rivalry, a factory-known weak point nobody put in the brochure. June 2008. Caterpillar announces it will exit on-highway engines entirely by 2010. The ACERT bet hasn't closed the gap in time, and the company isn't waiting around to find out if it ever will. Cummins' bet already has. Its SCR-equipped engines are production-ready the moment Caterpillar's exit opens a vacuum in the market. And here's the twist that follows. Some Caterpillar-badged vocational trucks built after the exit roll off the line running Navistar-supplied engines fitted with Cummins-sourced SCR components. The rival is quietly riding inside Cat's own trucks, cleaning the exhaust with technology built by the company Caterpillar just walked away from a fight with. By 2012, Cummins controls just over 40% of the North American heavy-duty on-highway engine market. 40.4% to be exact. That territory used to belong to Caterpillar, Navistar, and Packer's own captive engines. Packer's captive share slides from 6.1% to 5.2% in that same window. A real number, not a rounding error, on a market worth billions of dollars a year. That share isn't luck. It's the payoff of the independent supplier model J. Irwin Miller bet on back in 1973. Cummins could scale SCR production for every truck maker on the continent at once the instant Caterpillar exited, because it never had tied itself to building its own trucks. The Holset acquisition and the decision to stay brand agnostic weren't two separate bets. They were the same bet, paying out 39 years later. This entire collision tracks back to a single U.S. regulatory timeline. The EPA's tiered 2004, 2007, and 2010 NOx standards, redrawing an entire domestic industry's competitive map from a set of federal filings, not a boardroom fistfight. No tank shells, no courtroom brawl, just an emissions deadline neither company could out-argue. One company built almost everything itself and had to walk away from a market it couldn't hold. The other built for everyone and inherited that market overnight. Caterpillar doesn't get to fight the on-highway market back. It redirects entirely into off-highway, mining, and energy. The one arena left where it still builds every engine itself, still controls every spec from the block to the dealer lot. The retreat isn't a collapse. It's a company choosing the one fight it can still win outright over the one it's already lost. The map is now split. But splitting a map doesn't end a rivalry. It just moves where the next fight happens. That's the highway. Off-highway, in the mines and job sites, a different fight was already underway. Ask most people who Caterpillar's biggest rival is, and they'll say Cummins. They'd be wrong. Caterpillar's biggest global equipment rival isn't American. It's Komatsu, the Japanese manufacturer that's been undercutting Cat on cost since the 1970s. Caterpillar's answer isn't a better engine. It's the same edge planted back in 1925, a dealer network spanning roughly 160 dealers across 180 countries, turning parts and service into same-day reality on remote job sites in a way no rival, including Komatsu, has fully matched. The clearest proof sits at any major mine site. The Caterpillar 797F, the largest mechanical drive dump truck ever built. 4,000 horsepower bellows out of a 20-cylinder C175-20 diesel, a brute force roar under load, hauling a 400-ton payload, roughly $3.4 to $5 million each. Caterpillar has sold more than 1,000 of them. What almost no existing coverage of this rivalry mentions: Komatsu Cummins Engine Corporation, a joint venture founded in November 1993 at Oyama, Japan, celebrating its 500,000th engine together in early 2010. Cummins engines power a huge share of machines Caterpillar is actually competing against on job sites, meaning the rivalry viewers imagine as a two-company fight is quietly a three-body problem. So when Komatsu beats Caterpillar on a job site, there's a real chance a Cummins engine is under the hood of the machine that did it. The company Caterpillar can't outprice is running on the company Caterpillar can't outservice. In 2016, Caterpillar shuts down its vocational truck line, fully exiting the highway for good. The last quiet formality of the 2010 decision. A year later, in 2017, FBI and IRS agents raid 3 Caterpillar offices near Peoria, investigating roughly $8 billion allegedly shifted offshore through a Swiss subsidiary, Caterpillar Saarl. Caterpillar had paid PwC more than $55 million to design and run that structure. It routed profits from its lucrative replacement parts business through Geneva, avoiding an estimated $2.4 billion in U.S. taxes between 2000 and 2012. $2.4 billion. Enough to make Washington take notice. A Senate subcommittee had already called the structure out on the record. Senator Carl Levin. In the fantasy land that is international tax law, tax lawyers waved a magic wand to make millions of dollars in U.S. taxes disappear. In 2022, under CEO Jim Umpleby, a Caterpillar veteran who'd taken the top job in 2017, Caterpillar settles with the IRS for $740 million, covering 2007 through 2016. No penalties. And relocates its 97-year Illinois headquarters to Irving, Texas. Illinois still hosts Caterpillar's single largest employee concentration on Earth. It's a hometown to Sunbelt story, landing 2 years after the FBI and IRS raided 3 offices in the company's own backyard. The same year, Cummins CEO Tom Linebarger, closing out a decade running the country, spends $3.7 billion buying Meritor, building Cummins' own electric axles and components for a fight that hasn't started yet. Both companies just spent the early 2020s reorganizing for a fight neither one has actually had yet. The one over what happens when diesel stops being the only option. The fight over diesel's future was still years off. The fight over its past was not. December 2023, Cummins signs the largest Clean Air Act settlement in U.S. history. The number, $1,675 million. More than double the entire industry-wide penalty from the 1998 consent decree that started this story. The engine at the center of it, the 6.7-liter Cummins turbo diesel, whistling under boost, the direct successor to the 5.9-liter B series planted back in Chapter 2. The same engine family that built the Cummins guys subculture around a $50 dowel pin fix. Installed in Ram 2500 and 3500 trucks built between 2013 and 2023, roughly 630,000 of these engines carried undisclosed defeat devices, software that detected the EPA's test cycle and ran full NOx aftertreatment only while being tested, then dialed it back on the real road to protect performance and fuel economy. Drive it to a state emissions test and it behaves. Drive it home and it doesn't. Nearly 1 million engines built to cheat 2 ways at once. A further 330,000 engines carried separate undisclosed auxiliary emission control devices, for a combined total near 960,000 engines, and a nationwide recall of roughly 600,000 trucks. This isn't Cummins' first defeat device violation. In October 1998, Cummins signed the same federal consent decree that named Caterpillar, promising under law never to install another one. 25 years later, it did it again, the identical category of violation on the direct successor to the engine platform that built the Cummins guys subculture at roughly 67 times its 1998 penalty. Back in 1998, EPA Administrator Carol Browner called the mechanism exactly what it was. These defeat devices are really deceit devices. They defeat important public health protections and deceive the American people. The devices in the Ram trucks did the same job a quarter century later. Here's the flip side. Caterpillar has no tailpipe left to be fined for at all. The same 2010 exit that cost it the on-highway market is exactly why it has zero exposure to this specific reckoning. But Caterpillar was in that same 1998 courtroom. Neither company has clean hands on emissions, they were just caught at different times at very different scales. All in, the cost to Cummins, including more than $325 million in required remediation spending, lands near $2 billion. A real wound for a company roughly a fifth of Caterpillar's size. A separate 2019 carb-driven recall of 500,000 plus Cummins engines for defective aftertreatment shows the compliance problems weren't limited to one case. Caterpillar isn't free of pressure either, just a different kind. Incoming CEO Joseph Creed, a 28-year Caterpillar veteran, promoted from Chief Operating Officer into the top job in May 2025, inherits an estimated $2.2 to $2.4 billion in 2026 tariff costs, even as the company posts record earnings on mining and construction demand. Different regulator, same math. Somebody always pays. The settlement doesn't cost Cummins its market position. It keeps its share of the on-highway engine market. The fine is a wound, not a collapse. At Caterpillar, Jim Umpleby hands the CEO title to Joseph Creed in 2025, but holds on to the chairman's seat until he retires from the board entirely in April 2026, closing out the leadership era that took the company from Illinois to Texas. Jennifer Rumsey, the first woman to lead Cummins, its president and CEO since August 2022, steers the company toward the data center power boom instead, a business line that traces back to Cummins buying generator maker Onan in 1986. Cummins built its future selling power to anyone who'd write the check. Caterpillar built its future owning every inch of its own iron, right down to the dealer lot. Both bets are still running. Two companies, two scandals, 25 years apart on the same emissions category, plus a shared one from 1998 that started the clock. What each one does next is happening right now. The tariff pressure hasn't let up, and Caterpillar under CEO Joseph Creed closes out the year with record sales anyway, mining and construction demand outrunning the cost. Its new C13D 13-liter off-highway engine platform was announced back in 2023. It doubles down on the exact arena Caterpillar retreated into after 2010, the one where it still builds every engine itself, block to dealer lot. Cummins under CEO Jennifer Rumsey is riding a data center power generation boom. Record power systems results driving a raised full-year revenue guidance of 8 to 11%, while scaling back underperforming hydrogen investments and facing shareholder derivative investigations opened after the settlement. The numbers tell one story. This deal tells another. There's a company most viewers have never heard of that just became one of Cummins' most important customers. On June 16, 2026, Cummins announced an agreement with Source Energy to supply HSK-78 and QSK-60 natural gas generator sets for a behind-the-meter AI data center microgrid in West Texas. Deliveries running 2026 through 2030. The same HSK-78 platform Cummins built specifically to chase the AI data center boom. Not one customer, but an entire new power market that didn't exist a decade ago. Caterpillar's own Swiss tax criminal probe question, whether the investigation was improperly halted after former Attorney General Bill Barr, a former paid Caterpillar consultant, was nominated, stayed publicly open via a 2024 Senate letter that has never been fully answered. Both companies won, just not the same war, fought with different iron on different fronts, and neither one walked away clean. Caterpillar builds the biggest iron on Earth. Cummins never stopped selling power to anyone who'd pay for it. It just found a new customer. The data center is reshaping the grid right now, in West Texas this year. Splitting the map never settled who won. It just proved there was never one single fight to win. A shared courtroom in 1998 started the clock on both companies, and by the time it stopped, neither one had clean hands. Both of them are still standing. This wasn't a fight either company lost. It was a map, and they split it. Scandals, tariffs, and all. So the next time somebody at the counter tells you Caterpillar builds everything itself, or that Cummins is just a truck engine company, ask them which market they're actually talking about. Neither answer is complete on its own. One ask. For more of the engineering, not the marketing, hit subscribe. We tear down empires that don't explain themselves.